question, and something that has perplexed me this entire time. Why does the UK government think it's entitled to have backdoor access to advanced data protection users all over the world? Like, is there some aspect of advanced data protection that means any backdoor would have to be implemented globally? Because, like, on its face, it seems insane for the UK government to demand access to encrypted data of American users or Australian users or Japanese users. Like, that's the piece where it's hard to be all that sympathetic to the UK here.
Yeah, well, that's also why this story isn't over. So, I mean, it's a very good question. I think just to, when you think about this changing of the balance by Apple, there is a bit where people are like, why are you upset, Ben? We're just going back. The UK just wants to go back to where we were. And I think the problem is it's a real problem to introduce the norm of building backdoors into encryption. And so in some respects, that's why I added that extra update. We're saying, look, Apple's a little bit to blame here as well, because they shifted us to a place where the only answer is a backdoor if you're going to satisfy law enforcement. And that's bad. And so the why everywhere, I don't know. I mean, I think the UK has a hard time. I mean, it's hard to like do this without psychoanalyzing the UK and their previous sort of ruling the world mindset and the fact that they don't anymore. There's some speculation the US national security apparatus is on board with them doing that, because we can't do it. So can they do it on our behalf? So I don't. I mean, there's also the fact that data is inherently international. Like what do borders mean in a world, like, if the point of this is international terror networks, like what's the point of a border situation? This is where, but this gets at why it's not resolved yet. Apple's response, which again I think was perfectly predictable and understandable, and I think it behooves everyone to stop right here, is basically turning off advanced data protection in the UK, which is, we're not going to put a back door. We'll just remove this feature. And I think that is a justifiable place. It basically reverts. This is a better way to get back to the uneasy compromise than to institute a norm of putting back doors into data and to introduce the blindness of a Kalia type solution where you're putting in a back door and someone might break through and you have no idea until it's way too late.
At risk. I mean, and
that's right. It's better to know
all over the world.
It's better to know my data is insecure than to not think it's secure and it's actually not, right? And so I think this is a good place. Let's stop here. It makes sense.
It seems also like the only way Apple could have responded to this, when you really sort of game out the possibility.
I know, so I don't understand why it's stunning. I don't get it.
I mean, the three options Apple had was, one, you can provide the UK authorities with access to, or backdoor access to, worldwide user data, which potentially puts all of that at risk. That's untenable for Apple. You could pull advanced data protection from the UK, which is what they did, which does ultimately make it easier for the UK government to access UK users' information. You could also just completely pull iCloud services from the region, which would protect UK users from potential intrusions into their Apple data, but deny them of iCloud services and deny Apple of that revenue. Like that.
Well, it also sort of makes your phone unusable. I mean, so many apps and things rely on iCloud. I mean, the problem is that they are not satisfying the UK's demand for worldwide. Like this technical directive, again, applies so that they have worldwide access. And Apple is not satisfying that. I don't see how they could satisfy that. I think the UK should be satisfied with what Apple gave them. And if they keep pursuing this, saying, that's nice, you turn off for the UK, no, we want it for the world, I don't think they're going to like how that story ends. I don't see any world in which Apple, again, I've had lots of critiques about Apple's framing of privacy and the way I think they've used it in an anti-competitive way against entities like Facebook. But I don't, that's that doesn't mean I dismiss it or not think it's a real commitment. And Apple's not going to do this for worldwide just to stay in the UK market, right? I just don't like that was the next step. My first step was Apple's going to pull ADP in the UK. The next question is if the UK says, sorry, not good enough, we ask for worldwide access. I see it. I have a hard time seeing it playing out any other way.
Interesting. I mean, Apple, one of the issues that they face is that they're a public company and they can't just turn their back on a lot of revenue from the UK. And
right, but they can't obliterate their brand and their brand promise to the rest of the world either.
Yeah. So I guess the ball is in the UK's court at this point, and we'll see how badly they feel entitled to worldwide data access, which seems a little bit insane to me, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. So I also want to read just a sampling of the pushback while we're here before we shift gears. Tim Sweeney writes, crazy Apple PR spin being parroted here through different partisan channels. Apple just compromised all UK users by removing iCloud encryption and are having reporters say it was a brave act of rebellion. They think we're all idiots, Apple customers and Apple employees alike. And then he added, the Apple PR propaganda on this one is strong. Typically respectable reporters are touting Apple compromising encryption in the UK as somehow rebelling and refusing to build a back door. Folks, Apple just opened the front door. Do you have takes on that particular line of attack?
Yeah, it's really stupid, and it honestly delegitimizes a lot of Tim Sweeney's Apple critiques. I mean, this is a problem partisans fall into. Like, Sweeney has been fighting Apple for years and years and years, and so the immediate interpretation is the worst possible one that seems to lack any sort of understanding or context. Like, large companies have to follow the laws. That's why Tim Sweeney's been trying to get the law changed, like in the EU, and then is trying to hold Apple's feet to the fire to follow the law. Totally legitimate. In this case, what does he expect Apple to do? Right. To defy the UK's law? Then what? I mean, it's asinine. Like the reality.
That's the piece of it that's honestly confusing to me as a media consumer, because Tim Sweeney also surfaced this tweet from Aaron Wolf and said, Apple could easily have built their products in such a way that their answer to the UK government would be, we just sell computers to our customers and then they decide to use encryption. You have to coerce them, not us. Instead, they built an entire ecosystem in which Apple maintains complete control over how their computers are used. Now governments are coercing Apple. This was very predictable. I mean, what's the alternate scenario in which Apple isn't vulnerable to this kind of pressure? Like, what's the world they want to see to make this?
No, it's very easy. You don't set up iCloud on your computer, which you can do with which you could do. I mean, I don't know if you could do it on an iPhone. You can certainly do it on a Mac. Like, it's what I talked about before. You set up your own backup server. You set up, or you don't back up. You don't worry about it. You like, the reality is Apple has done what I think needs to be done, and appropriately so, which is the one thing you are incapable of doing as a consumer is having on-device encryption that is like encryption. You have to have a seed. You have to have something at the core that to sort of build the whole encryption on top of. That is in Apple's chips. That's in the secure enclave. If you're just building on software, anyone who gets root to a system has access to everything. So unless you're out there building your own chips and building your own computer, at some point you have to trust someone if you're going to have viable encryption. And frankly, I just would expect these people to understand how this stuff works. And I think they do, which makes me frustrated about this discussion because it's kind of fundamentally dishonest in that regard. I think I've been very clear in my criticism of Apple, and especially on some of these privacy points about going over the top. But you have to be honest about the reality in the water you're swimming in. And what Apple provides, and I thank them for it, is they give the root level security and belief that you can have fully encrypted data on your device. And if you take the necessary, does Apple make it super easy and obvious to link your device to their cloud services? Yes, they do. And they do that because they're trying to build products that people like. And people like having backups. They like being able to go to the website and access their photos. They like knowing if their device drops in the ocean, they're not going to lose pictures of Charles hitting Rose. There's this delusion that people live in that's not the real world. If you want to go the Richard Stallman route and try to build all your own pieces, go ahead. It's going to suck to use. And also, you're still dependent on the root provider of security, whoever that might be. It's not you, because you can't build your own chip.
And wouldn't it
this
be
is
less
just a
secure
reality
in that scenario once you start
No,
introducing?
it's not. Intel has a similar concept with their chips, or chip makers do, but you're depending on them, that there's not some sort of backdoor. This is just the reality. And this is why Apple would not and should not give in to the UK, because this is the real thing. I need Apple to be trustworthy for me to believe that my device is trustworthy. Because at the end of the day, I can't build that. I can take care of my own backups. I can take care of lots of things, but I need to depend on the root provider to be trustworthy. And Apple, say whatever you want, and I've said plenty criticizing them about these issues. I do trust them that the core device is secure. And that's why I salute them for standing up the San Bernardino case. And that's why I salute them for backing out of the UK here. I don't want the company that I provide on to provide a level of security that I cannot provide on myself